damn plate. Oh crap, come on, I'm trying.
Recording in progress.
You are ready to go.
Call meeting to order, 7 o'clock, August 25th. Please rise and join me in our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for joining us today and those at home. Mr. McKee is absent for tonight. That's why you have Plan B and me as the acting mayor. Agenda approval, do you have additions or subtractions from the agenda? Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. We do have a few additional items that were provided to council. We have some final audit documentation, the May meeting minutes, as well as an updated, we have an item 7I, which is a liquor license for Omni Brewing for the Heidi's Grow House event that's happening on September 24th. They've done it in the past. There was just a little bit of a lag in getting the information to us, so that's an additional item. We have a revised resolution related to Walcott Glen, just outlining we did further review of the architectural standards, so there are 3 additional homes on that. We have a final copy of the labor agreement as item 9D, and then we would like to remove item 9C, as we were not able to get a final cost share agreement from St. Therese. They are reviewing it, they just were not able to get final comments to us by today.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
I would like to add 10A and 10C to consent. And I would also like to take 11A off. That's something Mr. Mayor and I were working on together, and since he's absent, I'd prefer, I could present, but I think it'd be best if we both were part of that.
Sure.
Anything else? Yeah.
May I ask why we'd be removing 11A? Isn't it just a normal report?
I'm sorry, I meant 9B.
Oh, 9B, okay.
Yeah. One is the planning commission, one is the active planning.
Oh, there you go.
Yep.
Yeah. Good catch.
And then A and C on 10 would go to consent?
Yeah. Anything else?
May I ask one question regarding procedure before we move forward?
Sure.
Did we need to have a roll call?
I don't think we need to have a roll call.
Staff has marked down who is present.
Okay. You made a motion, I'll second your motion.
All those in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Item 4, commission representatives. I don't see any. Are they boycotting me?
Our commission representatives, I believe we might have one. Mark is on, joining us virtually, and we do have at least one phone number joining us. That could be our other commission.
Okay. Feel free to jump in if there's something in the presentation or on the agenda that you feel like you can add to. Item number 5 is open forum. We have public comment opportunity. I know some people have signed up, and I welcome you to come speak. When you come, please state your address for the record.
So with that,
Jeremy said to wait until open.
so we're at open forum now, so
But
any.
the other open.
Oh, this one is for things not specifically on the agenda.
Perfect.
So if anybody is here to speak about the things not specifically on the agenda, either raise your hand online or step up to the mic.
And Mayor, at this, we do have one person raising their hand virtually. If you could state your name and address for the record.
Yes, hi, this is Mark Lanterman. I'm the representative from the Planning Commission. Is it possible
Mark,
to
just
get
a
the
moment,
video
we're having
turned on? The
some
audio is really good, but I can't see anyone.
Technical
Thank you.
difficulties hearing you. Give us just a moment.
Thank you.
Mark, do you want to go, if you wanted to speak?
Yeah,
Mark,
can you
we're
hear me
still not
okay?
able
That
to
was my only comment.
hear you.
I was just hoping to see everyone. Yep, there it is. Thank you.
Yep. Perfect. Now we can go ahead and hear you, Mark, if you'd like to, if there's anything you want to say, certainly let us know. Mark, you're still muted. If you did want to speak, this would be a good.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you heard me. Yeah, I
Oh.
have nothing to comment on. I just wanted to see the video.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I will close open forum. Do we need to have a vote on that?
Nope.
Okay. Item 6A is the audit presentation, and that is usually delivered live. They weren't able to make it today, so we have a 10-minute video on the results of the audit. They asked if they could play it, and my opinion was that we should listen to the audit of our city. I think it's in the public's interest. But if you strenuously oppose it, you could override my thoughts on it. But my thoughts are that we play it.
The audit are the slides we received.
Yes.
The City of Corcoran's
I think we
2021
should go.
financial statement audit results. Hello, my name is Justin Nilsson. I am a senior audit manager for Abdo, and I will be going through the City of Corcoran's 2021 financial statement audit results. I'd first like to say thank you to the City Council of the City of Corcoran for having us as your audit firm. We appreciate our partnership. And I'd also like to say thank you to all the staff members that were involved in helping us put together the audit for this year. With some turnover, we are doing things a little bit later this year. We really appreciate all the hard work from Maggie and Jessica and everybody else who helped out, knowing that it has been a challenging year. So we appreciate that and thank you. Brief introduction of what I'll be going over in my presentation. I will start with sharing the audit opinion, how we arrived at the audit opinion, the responsibility of the audit firm, as well as any audit findings for 2021. I'll then go into the general fund, other governmental funds, and enterprise fund results with some additional charts. And I will close with some key performance indicators comparing the City of Corcoran's to other cities of similar size. So we are issuing a clean, unmodified opinion for 2021 for this city, which is the financial statement opinion the city is looking for. So to arrive at our opinion, we did a hybrid approach of on-site and remote work, looking at paying of bills, paying of employees, tax revenue, grant receipts, utility billing transactions, what the council gets to make decisions, etc. So we do have one finding that we'll go over on the next slide, but overall a good year. And again, internal controls, just the one finding. The second thing we do as part of our audit is test Minnesota legal compliance and state statutes. The Office of the State Auditor does put guides on their website that we are required to test as part of our audit. A couple examples of some of those things is paying bills timely, and contract and bidding rules are another thing that we test as part of our audit. And we're happy to say that we did not run into any compliance issues for the 2021 audit. So continuing with the audit results, and again, the aforementioned 2021 finding, we do have the one internal control finding titled timely bank reconciliation. So it was noted during our audit that there was some difficulty getting cash to reconcile down to zero, mainly due to some turnover and just overall timeliness of the bank reconciliation, getting things done in a timely manner. Again, it was noted when we were out for field work doing the audit, this process was still being completed. So this is not something that we expect to be an issue in future years, but again, something we do see as an internal control related risk, and one thing to pay attention to, and understanding how important it is to get those bank reconciliations done timely. We do share some results from our prior year audit. We do just note that there was a material audit adjustment or an internal control related finding in the prior year. This was related to payments made to the city of Maple Grove for some connection fees. Mainly the finding from the prior year related to just the paying these amounts or remitting them to the city outside of one fiscal year to another. So again, no similar issues in in 2021. So I think overall a good result there. Switch gears a little bit. We start with the general fund balance. And on the screen we do show a chart that compares the city's fund balance, unrestricted fund balance, and unassigned fund balance to its future year budget. So we do see the offset of 1 year. We do note the city does have a minimum unrestricted fund balance policy of 35%. So overall, in the past 5 years, we've really seen a positive trend in the right direction of both the unrestricted and assigned fund balance. Again, unassigned fund balance at the end of 2021, close to 42%, and the unrestricted balance about 47%. So again, something to keep in mind as the city continues to grow and increases its general fund budget, to watch that fund balance percentage in future years. But overall, again, positive results. The one thing I will mention too about the difference between unrestricted and unassigned, again, unassigned fund balance is just as it sounds, it would be unassigned and to be able to use for anything. There is a distinction category for fund balance that is titled assigned or assigned for future capital projects or things of that nature, which does make up the difference between the unrestricted and unassigned balances on this, that we see here. The next slide looks at how we got to our general fund balance amount, looking at the general fund budget to actual. So the first thing we noticed that the city did budget for a balanced budget or no increase in fund balance. So actual results came in favorable where the city did increase its fund balance over $650,000. The main reason for that was the revenues over budget by about $750,000. The biggest driver for that was the city's permit revenue above budget by about $650,000, as well as some intergovernmental revenue or miscellaneous grants above budget as well. Expenditures were also over budget, mainly in relation to the public safety, again, tied to the permit expenditures over budget as well. So the only other thing to probably point out is the city did have a transfer out budget of $235,000 that was not made. In a discussion with management, it was decided that this will kind of take place in FY22, related to how the city may or may not create some additional funds, or just moving additional funds to that long-range planning fund again in the future. All right, the next slide looks at the city's general fund revenues and expenditures. So we do just show two different bar charts here for 3 different years. On the left, we do show first the city's revenues. The main thing to point out there, again, the license and permits continually increasing as well as the city's taxes. And just noting how big the tax line is compared to all the other revenues in the general fund. The other one on the right there is looking at the general fund expenditures, and again, we just would look for anything that stands out one way or the other. And I think just again looking at the public safety, knowing that it was a high year for our permit revenue, that increase in public safety, those costs continue to go up. So I think that's the one thing that sticks out there for the city's expenditures. All right, the next slide looks at the city's special revenue fund balances. So not a whole lot of activity in these funds during the year. I think the one thing, again, to point out that most of these funds are either committed or restricted for use for the fund name or the fund distinction. So overall, not a huge increase, decrease one way or the other. And just to note that the majority of the balance is restricted for use. Next would be the city's capital project fund balances. So we do see the same two charts here again. The city does have a number of different capital project funds. Did open a few during the year for some existing and some future project-related expenditures there. So when we look at the capital projects as a whole, the balance did decrease about $1.8 million, which does signify some of the projects related to the capital equipment purchases, as well as the city hall remodel are reaching completion. So I think that's overall a good thing, as well as some of the additional expenditures made before resources have been received related to the Corcoran Trail, some of the other road projects. So again, if we look towards the bottom chart, or the second chart there, we do see that most of the balance is made up in the restricted, mainly due to the fact that a lot of these are either received from park dedication fees or for developer contributions. Next is the city's debt service funds. So there are 4 of those. It would be governmental and non-enterprise related. But we do see, again, the 2 charts, we do outline the different debt service funds in relation to their cash balance, total assets, and total debt outstanding. We also just show a future outlay of the principal and interest payments in bar chart format. So I think the thing to point out here is, again, the city does have some debt out there, but only just the 4 of them related to the governmental funds. Again, I think close to $800,000 over the next 5 to 6 years in relation to the total debt payments. The one thing to point out is that the 2016 A bonds is in a little bit of a cash deficit. The total assets are there, about $130,000, but just something that we recommend the city continually look at to ensure that in the future resources are there to pay those future bond payments for that 2016 A bond. To switch gears a little bit, we go into the city's enterprise funds, the city's water and sewer funds. These graphs are somewhat new to the city. We prepare these for all of our cities. However, the water and the sewer fund for the city of Corcoran are in somewhat of their infancy stages, so a little bit of a different thing. So we just decided to put them in for this year. So they are a little new. What we do show is the top chart is meant to be operational in nature, as well as including the connection fees. Over time, what we would look for is that orange operating receipts bar being sufficient to cover the operating disbursements and debt payments. And again, knowing that it's in its infancy stage and most of the receipts are made up with connection fees, that's just something to be aware of. And something that we do include in our chart. So again, over time, we do see that the user fees or operating receipts are increasing, which I think is a good thing, and getting closer to that black operating disbursement bar and debt payments. So I think overall, pretty good year. And you see over the past 3 years, obviously the receipts for connection fees and operations have exceeded those payments. It's important to note that that top chart does not include anything related to capital expenditures, and it is meant to be, again, somewhat of an operational chart to see if rates and connections are sufficient. The bottom chart does show the city's cash balance and a minimum target cash balance, which we outline as the following year's debt service payment plus 50% of operations. So again, the city does have a good cash balance there, about $3.4 million. And again, well under the target minimum balance that we have outlined below. Similar 2 charts for the city's sewer fund. Again, nothing new here that I didn't mention on the other slide, but again, I think the city's sewer fund has a little bit of a decreased cost, obviously not as much revenue either, but overall this fund is operating really well. Overall connection fees were strong in 2021, and as we look at that in comparison to the overall cash balance chart, that has been on a steady increase and up to $2 million at the end of 2021. So to tie everything all together, we do show a cash and investment balances by fund chart here to show kind of, when we put everything together, where's the cash located, and what is our trend. So I think overall, the past 3 years, I think overall things trending in the right direction, close to a little bit more than 15.5 million in cash. Again, probably some developer contributions received in 2021, increasing it almost to 19 million that have been spent on some project expenditures. So I think overall, again, looking at those, I think also the only other thing I'd point out is a good split between capital, general, and enterprise fund for the overall cash balances. I think it's good to have to things separated a little bit and not having one type of fund have all the cash. We will close with some key performance indicators where we compare the city of Corcoran to those in the Class 4 city and other Class 4 cities, which would be those cities under 10,000 in population, as well as other cities in Hennepin County. So we'll start with the city's tax rate. Overall, very consistent tax rate and a little bit of a decline in 2021, which is a good thing. And again, the city does compare very favorably to those of other cities in the Class 4 under 10,000 in population. A little bit higher, but pretty comparable to those in Hennepin County. We also note just the taxes per capita. Again, this one really just a total tax number divided by the number of residents in the city. Again, this one compares very favorably again to the cities in Hennepin County. A little bit on the higher side related to others in Class 4 cities, but again, given the city's growth, I think that nothing too alarming there. Next is the debt key performance indicators, and we look at a similar chart to the taxes where we just compare overall debt to total residents, as well as the debt service expenditures as a percent of total expenditures. So we do note a spike there in 2020 where we did have a refunding bond issued and paid off. But overall, I think as we look at the debt per capita numbers, even as the city is growing, I think comparing favorably to those in the class and in Hennepin County is a really positive sign for the city. Last turn I'll go over is the expenditures. What we do here is we, again, just have the current expenditures per capita and the capital expenditures per capita. We'll say the capital expenditures per capita obviously is somewhat dependent on need and what's going on in the city, but the current expenditures per capita can show operationally how cities compare to others of similar size in the county. So what I do see, and then just looking at here, I think the city of Corcoran is right kind of in line with some of those other cities. So I think a good positive thing for the city, and nothing to point out there. We've reached the end of the presentation, and again, we do share our contact information. Again, my name is Justin Nelson, Senior Audit Manager. I encourage you to reach out to me with any questions directly, or have staff of the city reach out to me. I'd be happy to meet, set up a phone call, attend a future meeting, etc., to go over any questions that you may have on my presentation or anything that we do as part of our audit, etc. Again, I know that we're doing things with a video this year versus being in person. So again, I would strongly encourage you, if you do have any questions, to please reach out to us. Thank you, and good luck for the rest of 2022 and into 2023. Thanks.
Does anybody have questions Jess should ask the team, or things you need to get more detail on?
I was interested in why the water fund balance fell between 2020 and 2021, specifically what investments we've made.
I would want to double check. We can certainly
That's fine.
double check on that. If I think part of it would be related to that material finding where we hadn't paid Maple Grove for some of the connection charges, if I recall correctly, but we
Okay.
can verify
That's
that.
fair. Thank you.
Anything else? On to item 8, planning business. We have 3 things on our docket. One is the Walcott Glen.
Consent agenda?
Oh, yeah. We're gonna do 7 before 8 as a little treat. Consent agenda.
So
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
May I ask a question of clarification?
Sure.
We added
We added.
three items,
Yes.
and I'm just wondering, on the sign ordinance, that's a direction item, that's not an approval item? Does that has to probably be actually discussed and not, because what are you approving? You're not giving direction.
On that one in particular, it is whether or not you want us to move forward with it being a city-initiated project. So if that is, if you want to make that clarification in this motion, then we could move forward with it, I think. Or if you want to have some additional
I'm gonna
discussion.
pull it. Can I do a friendly amendment and leave 10C out of the,
Well, you can pull it from you can pull it from the consent agenda, the ones that we're voting on now, and then we can discuss it, make a motion on it, and then vote on it still on the consent agenda.
Yes, we could do that.
Just set it aside.
Okay.
Instead of A through, I counted K now,
Yep.
you would remove the last item, K, sign ordinance.
I'll make a motion that we approve items 7A through 7,
J.
J.
My alphabet is right, I'm gonna go back a few years.
yes.
Yes, that would be correct.
Pull K.
And pull K. We have a motion.
I'll second that.
Okay.
You already made a motion, does it have to be amended? Where's your notes on Robert's?
I didn't have a motion on, that. The motion just,
The original motion was seconded by Jeremy.
Yep.
So John revised his motion to exclude one of the consent agenda items, and I will amend my second
To
in
allow
line
that.
with that change.
Okay.
perfect.
All those in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Now I'll make a motion for discussion of consent agenda item K,
Yes, the sign ordinance.
the sign ordinance.
Perfect. Would you like me to discuss the request in front of you?
Yes.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and Council. We did receive a request from the Lions to look at a sign ordinance amendment, and staff would just like to understand if that's something that we'd like to have as a city project, or if that would be something that we would like to ask the Lions to move forward with a formal application for a zoning ordinance amendment. At this time, I've talked to the city attorney about what could be included in that, and we believe that we can do a special event type of ordinance amendment that allows for permitting of not content, but permitting related to special events in order to ensure that sign locations are appropriately outside of safety triangles and such.
Special events not including elections, they're not considered elections.
It would be, election signs are exempt under state law for specific
Okay.
items. This would be related to special events within the city that would be permitted, such as events at City Park or Lions Park, things that would need additional public safety. As for some time, staff has been interested in looking at a special event permit separately, so it would tie to that and allow us to kind of have a more uniform practice for that.
So then there would be one application for the event, and they could also say, we want to have a sign at this location, so that it all gets reviewed.
It would be noise, it would be security, the police department, and all of those items related to that.
Like the efficiency involved in doing it at one step.
Yes, as do we.
So I'll make a motion to direct staff to initiate a city-initiated ordinance amendment.
I will second.
All those in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. Okay, on to number 8. At this time, we have planning business discussing Walcott Glen, Cook Lake Highlands and the O'Brien concept plan, and I open the floor for public comment at this time.
Yes, if you could, anyone in the audience, you can come to the podium, state your name and address, and if anyone's joining us virtually, if you'd like to comment, we'll have you press star 9 if you're on a phone, or if you are on a electronic device, press reactions and raise your hand, and we'll recognize you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Lynn Alberts. I live at 7490 Fur Lane. I have some questions before the final plat is recorded for Cook Lake Highlands. I'd like an explanation of the drainage plan along the off-road trail for lots 1 through 10. It looks like it empties into Bass Lake Crossings owned Outlot D. The 11/29/21 Trek plat does not have stormwater emptying into Bass Lake Crossings Outlot D. The 6/13/22 JLB Limited plat does. Bass Lake Crossings has lost some trees in Outlot D due to stormwater from their own streets and spring runoff, so we understand that. My question is who approved the stormwater to be emptied into Bass Lake Crossings Outlet D? B, can stormwater from the 10 lots be directly piped into a culvert on the west side of the trail, or can it be piped into the holding pond that is in Outlet F in Cook Lake Highlands? C, will the elevation on lots 1 through 10 keep the water and freezing ice from running down onto and down the off-road trail? D, what other stormwater is flowing into Outlet D from Cook Lake Highlands? If the stormwater from Cook Lake Highlands flows into Bass Lake Crossings Outlet D, the stormwater will eventually end up in Bass Lake Crossings holding and filtration ponds. The maintenance of these ponds is the responsibility of Bass Lake Crossings Homeowners Association. The Bass Lake Crossings Declaration of Covenants dated April 5th, 2018 states that the Bass Lake Crossing Association shall maintain stormwater ponds in the common area in accordance with Corcoran City Code requirements. The City of Corcoran and Maple Grove have an agreement that they will share the maintenance of the stormwater for Cook Lake Highlands. Should there be such agreement with Bass Lake Crossings and Cook Lake Highlands if they continue to put that water into Outlet D? And F, does Cook Lake Highlands Elm Lane stormwater empty into Outlet F into Cook Lake's development? I'm assuming that one does. Second question is, Beth is here, so maybe she can answer this. Did Cook Lake Highlands receive permission to remove the Bass Lake Crossings hill to the west of lots 2 through 7? If so, is it in writing? Because there's a memo from the engineer on June 21st requesting that any adjacent improvements must have written approval prior to affecting the property owners. Will Bass Lake Crossing Outlet D property have survey stakes along the off-road trail to indicate where the property line is? At one point from the trail over where it goes to the end, there's probably about at least 10 to 15 feet. That's Outlet D, that's Bass Lake Crossing's property. Does Bass Lake, this is a question for the city, does Bass Lake Crossings need to put catch basins back in the road gutters for catching the dirt that will be produced from the construction from Cook Lake Highlands? Because they're bringing, on 74th, they're bringing dirt and mud down there. If it rains, it's going to come back down there. They just pulled those filtration out of the storm sewers. And then the last one is MI Homes going to be building the homes on the 19 lots? If not, will the new builder be held to the same design standards and restrictions as submitted in the PUD? Thank you.
Normally, public comment is an opportunity for us to listen. And we don't usually answer questions directed at us during this time.
Okay.
But I'm going to ask Kevin, are any of these questions new or things you don't know the answer to or haven't heard of or thought about at this point yet?
Mayor, I just got this information about 5 minutes before the meeting, so may I suggest that I set up a meeting with the resident and our inspection team and walk through these, and that would be a better approach.
That's what I'm thinking.
Pretty
Yes.
detailed questions.
Very detailed questions. So appreciate it. I don't know if you expected answers tonight.
No, I just wanted to, I put it that direction so people would, I didn't want to just get up there and talk, so that's why I gave you
Fair
all
enough. Okay.
the sheets, so they could follow up on those
So we'll-
questions. So I wasn't expecting answers, but my biggest concern was, I wanted to make sure that this gets resolved before the final plat is recorded, because once it's recorded, these are moot points then.
Yeah, so some of these things may, these are complicated questions that may, just because a final plat is recorded doesn't mean there's no, that they don't have to follow the rules or the laws or the watershed or anything like that. So we'll work, Kevin will work with you in hopefully addressing these questions. Thank you for bringing them forward.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you, Lynn.
Anyone else?
Anyone else wanting to speak? Mayor, at this time, there is no one raising their hand virtually.
Okay. So I close public comment opportunity. Walcott Glen, final plat and PUD. Does anybody have any questions?
I just had a question. I think it was in the supplemental information that we got, there was redlining. Was that just clerical mistakes from what was approved in the preliminary?
What was provided in the materials today were the red lines version that we had. It is a clerical error for the single-family units portion, and then
Yes, if I could, Jess, I would just say yes. What was submitted to the council tonight was an updated map showing the parcels that single-family parcels where architectural upgrades are required. There was an error, 3 lots that do require the update. Mike and I put this together for a preliminary plat, carried it forward to final, and didn't catch that error, so thank you, Councilmember Nichols, for pointing that out. And the resolution condition was updated to reflect this map. So the addition of those 3 lots, so it is a clerical error.
Thank you. Get credit for everything I say.
I did bring it up last week. Mr. Mayor, I have a follow-up question on that point, if that's okay.
Yes.
Is there a graphic we can put up for reference?
sure.
Perfect, thank you. So I understand from the preliminary submission that the townhomes are intended to meet the 4-sided architectural requirements all the way around by the default design that was presented. But I know that that has changed in the past in other projects as things have come through for amendments. I'm wondering if we should clarify that that is required for any of the townhomes that would require, if the original plan didn't already dictate stone on the backside and that sort of thing. Do we designate those just knowing that the plan is to comply so that it's recorded in the agreement?
If I could just clarify, so these standards for single-family do not apply to the townhomes. The townhomes don't have this secondary elevation requirement, but they do have different requirements. For example, that requires that stone on all 4 elevations. Single-family don't. So it's a different standard, so I want to make sure I'm understanding what you're trying to accomplish so that we can do that.
What I'm trying to ensure is that, say next year, the market shifts, it's no longer economically feasible to follow the original design standard. Is there a control that would ensure that any applicable requirements are still satisfied if we don't record it now in the agreement?
Can you go to the slide that shows the townhomes? It might just be helpful for this conversation. Yep. So you can see on this is the approved townhome plan, and it has stone wrapped around all 4 elevations, and it's got the lap siding and the shake. If they vary from this, it's a modification to the PUD approval, and so they would have to come back. So I think that, I believe, answers that.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Good question.
Any other questions? Just so the audience knows, we, on all three of these items, we've had a year's worth of meetings, and being it's a final plat approval, this isn't the first time we've seen this. They have come, we've commented on it, Planning Commission has commented on it, they've come back, we've commented on it, they've changed. So, even though it seems like there's, these are pretty big, thick presentations, we've prepared for this and have had numerous discussions on all the topics.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I do have two proposals for Resolution 97.
Okay.
The first one, I'll give background. I was made aware of a situation in Bellwether where trees are warranted. Somebody had a tree die. They wanted to put a different tree back in the second year. And because of the way the agreements are structured with the landscaping plan, they weren't able to get a different tree installed. I would like to add some flexibility into the agreement at this point so that if that were to happen to somebody, it would be by agreement between the developer and the homeowner without requiring it to come back to the city council for a landscape amendment to the plan that was originally approved.
Kendra, has that sort of thing been a problem in the past? Have there been outcomes that we're not thinking about if they want to put a different kind of tree in? Is that an issue?
Yeah, so it was not in Ravinia ever a problem, but in Bellwether, there are some residents who bought houses with a streetscape. So I want to back up and say, from a staff perspective, street trees are part of the green infrastructure. It's an important part of how the streets look. So we're very thoughtful when we review it about making sure that we have a system of trees. So maybe it's maple, oak, linden, maple, oak, linden, or block by block. There's a way that the tree canopy matches so that ultimately you have a streetscape like downtown Minneapolis, old elms and oaks that look good. So we're reluctant to have somebody put in a silver maple where we don't have any of those on the streetscape. When a landowner and a developer want to make a change to the approved landscape plan, they do have to come to staff, and we will review it, and we have made changes. There's a group in Bellwether that hates hackberries, and they're unhappy that they can't put in just whatever tree they want. So it has become an issue in Bellwether, and we've told Pulte, come in with a new street plan where you have a plan that makes sense, and we'll look at it and probably approve it. We've made amendments. It does not need to come to you. It doesn't need to be that complicated, but we certainly do believe as staff it's important to have a plan that makes sense, not just willy-nilly on the street trees only. In your backyard, plant whatever you want.
Hackberries, do they leave messes or something, or people don't like?
I don't know.
Oh.
I love them. Our wetland specialist loves them. We were on a site yesterday, and we were so excited. The hackberries were the healthiest trees on site.
I have like 200 hackberries.
I don't know. People have different opinions.
Yeah.
So,
I'll just chime in. I have two lindens that are street trees, and they draw in thousands of Japanese beetles. So I'm sensitive to the trees that are selected, and I'm fine with limiting it to a certain palette, if we want to do it that way. And maybe we only allow trees that are, part of that development, that are already approved. Or maybe we limit it in some other way. But I would like to make it less onerous for residents to achieve something that they can live with.
but all that has to happen today is that owner needs to work with the developer and say, there's hackberries, maples, and oaks on this tree. I don't like the hackberry. Can I take out the hackberry that's in front of my house and replace it with an oak tree? And if it's the same thing that's on that streetscape, we've said yes every time. So I don't know that it's an onerous process, but certainly council can do what they want. But right now, we have amended streetscape plans, and you certainly can, but we would want to make sure it's something that's in line with that streetscape palette.
Well, do we even have the power to amend the final PUD in that regard?
I think a modification like that probably benefits the you couldn't add new conditions. To me, this is something that probably opens it up for the developer. If they don't have to send me an email saying, I want to swap this linden for a hackberry, it saves them 5 minutes. So they,
How,
What if they say, I want to, I mean, if they don't present it to you in any way, shape, or form, what's them from swapping half the trees down the street?
right.
So I think well, I understand your point about it should be a discussion between the owner and the developer. It seems like it's basically taking all the control away from the city when it comes to the plan, if that could actually happen. You know, they basically could say, well, we changed all these trees because we had discussions with people and they don't like them.
I would say that's a benefit, not a bug. I mean, we're building the city for the residents, not for.
Yeah, but they don't have to even prove the conversation took place.
Well, yeah, you should probably have some kind of a recording that this actually occurred and the resident agreed.
so a bigger question would be what's in the city's interest if, let's just say everybody tore out their front yard trees and just planted pines? Is there an interest? Well, one, would that be covered by a homeowners association, the trees on the boulevard, or is that a specific city only?
Well, it
Homeowners
very
is-
much matters on the project. So depending on the particular street, sometimes those street trees are in our public right-of-way, and the HOA is responsible for maintaining them. We certainly do have an interest in what trees are in our right-of-way in terms of how it affects snow plowing and maintenance, as well as how it affects utilities. So sometimes the street tree is in our D&U easement outside of the right-of-way, and I would argue we still have an interest in that as well. Again, because it's our drainage and utility easement.
Oh, okay. So there's roots and different things involved, so
But there's not a tree planting ordinance that regulates what trees you can plant where either. It's, I think, a question of where is the right place to have the requirement. Once the development is done and you're out of the warranty period, there's nothing to stop anybody from taking out a tree in their front yard and replacing it anyway. So why would we make Pulte replant a tree that somebody doesn't want for them to come back the next year and cut it down and put in something new?
With the exceptions of the ones that are in the right-of-way. They do not have the right to take those out, because those, the HOA has to maintain, and they're in our right-of-way. But I just want to, because I've had this conversation with residents in Bellwether, and there are some trees that are in right-of-way and some trees that are on private property. And I do think there's one or two homeowners who, when it comes out of warranty period, will remove the hackberries on their own and replace them with whatever they think is a better tree.
So,
And there's nothing we can do at that point, but while it's under warranty, we believe it makes sense to stick to the landscape plan.
so even if it's in the right of way, at some point when the warranty is gone, the city has no say, period? If it's in the right of way?
We do in the right of way because we have an encroachment and
Yeah,
maintenance
so
agreement.
that's,
Yep.
so whether they do it during, okay, I guess in the right of way, it's sort of our call. And would you suggest you want to have the right of way be the,
We can exclude right-of-way trees. I think that's fine. So the text that I would propose, and we can debate if this makes sense, maybe there's not support for it, but I would propose any tree replacement outside of a right-of-way under this project after occupancy shall be of a species selected with the mutual consent of the owner and the applicant from the palette for the development.
They can't reach.
That's a motion.
What if they can't reach consent? And there's no tree planted?
I don't know why you wouldn't be able to reach consent.
I was working
You've got a
on my
limited list
plan.
that the developer is putting in anyway, that
Thank you.
the homeowner could choose from.
Right. But mutual consent, I mean, if the owner says, I don't like this, I only want this tree, and the developer says, oh, I'm not gonna put that tree in because it doesn't, is there a tie-breaking mechanism?
I don't know that we need to figure that out at council level. Dean, any concerns with that provision?
Mr. Acting Mayor, members of the council, I think we would probably not have any concerns with that, frankly. I mean, we would work with our resident or our customer as well as we could. We'd probably still want to check in with city staff just to make sure that there's no concerns there as well. We'd try to make it as fluid as a process as possible.
Thank you.
Yep.
Now, you said you had two concerns. Do you want us to
That's
vote on
the
the
first, why don't we
first
just do one at a time? It'll be simpler.
Okay. On a final PUD, can you change the language without the permission of the applicant? Oh, the applicant spoke. Well, I'll make a motion, we use Jeremy's language in the final PUD when it comes to trees.
Second.
All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0. Item number 2.
Second one, I don't know if this necessarily needs to be added. There's a note in the staff report about parking, no parking signs and when they would be added. I would just like to make sure that they're added as part of street installation before permits are issued, just to make sure that that happens. And there's been issues in Ravinia with a lot of construction traffic parking on both sides of the street, which has caused some safety issues with sidewalks being blocked and that sort of thing. So I just want to make sure that for this development, we make sure those signs go in earlier.
Is there a city ordinance that covers that now?
Does it even
And
apply to us until we take credit for the road?
That's a great question. Kevin might be able to.
It's a shared question. We try to, we have a signage plan, so typically in line with the streets, they should be installing the signs. And then particularly the signs in the dead ends, like future road extensions, those we want to get up as early as possible. I can certainly raise that to the team to highlight that effort to make sure we get things installed efficiently. I guess the question of enforceability, I'll pass over to Matt, in terms of when it's a platted right-of-way, but when it becomes a public right-of-way, and there's a transition period where we accept the road, and it's under warranty, and when it's still their responsibility, and so I'll let Matt comment on that.
Yeah, we're limited as to what parking enforcement we can do on private property, and typically that's limited to handicap parking, fire lane, or things like that that are more specific to public safety. So I guess until it's publicly accepted, it's considered, in my opinion, to be considered private property. We could run into some legality of enforcement issues. And typically that, we've worked with developers to try and resolve the issues if we're seeing repeated behavior or, so while we still have the signs up, our ability to cite, we really just try and problem solve on those, I guess, while we're in that transition. This is kind of how we've approached it.
If it's a part of a final permit, then essentially the applicant would agree to self-enforcement on the sign thing, wouldn't they? And if it's part of a final plat.
Hopefully.
Final plat provisions are enforceable, aren't they? Even if they're on private property?
The statutory authority to issue citations on private property are what's limited. So it's not saying that we couldn't have conversations, but I think that if it's not a public, per se, public property yet, I think it probably falls better in the applicants or in the developer's purview.
So but they would be in violation, so maybe they're not in violation of the city law. They would be in violation of the application. Just like any other policy, if you violate a policy, there's things that the city can do to correct the policy. So it wouldn't be law enforcement, it would be city enforcement of a different kind.
So excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I had brought that up with the Ravinia additions that were under development and then the property over by the storage, and the conversation we had at that point was those aren't public streets yet, and they can store stuff on the sidewalks, they can have things blocking and those kind of things because they aren't our streets.
I think the difference is that if you have it in the, if you address it in the permitting process and you say you can't have 2x4s on the sidewalks, then it becomes an issue that can be enforced, not through the police department, but through the city. So I suspect.
So we would be,
Well, it would be through the police department, but
We would be
it's not an
changing it.
ordinance.
What?
It's not an ordinance that they're enforcing, it's basically a clean up your site type of thing.
Yeah, it wouldn't be, something you do, it would be a ordinance violation.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're trying to do with it, but construction sites are inherently dirty, inherently chaotic, and forcing someone to put a sign up that we can't enforce anyway, and it just becomes in the way of construction equipment and them getting around, and landscaping in the future seems like it's kind of a waste, in my mind.
Getting in the way of landscaping?
Well, you put a sign up along the edge of a street that says no parking, and all it is dirt, it's not even ungraded dirt. At some point, somebody's got to either work around that or yank it back out, do their work, and then stick it back in the ground, which is just gonna add to the cost. It's gonna get paid on to somebody else that's purchasing the property. But no, I don't see any real benefit in it, to be honest with you.
Do we have are there any other rules of when or prevent, or any existing codes or rules that in theory prevent the situation Jeremy's talking about? Or is it just, we don't have anything that addresses, what would you say, parking on both sides of the street during a construction project?
It's really like, I guess it's really hard, you can, excuse me, do a hypothetical. So there could be a scenario where they dump something and it's potentially an illicit discharge, whether it's the MS4 ordinance, or there could be enough vehicles blocking it where now it's a fire lane issue. So it's almost site specific, and so we would utilize all the tools of either the ordinance or the development contract. We'd work through an education process first to make sure people are understanding it, and if there's repeated behaviors, we use the judgment and the tools that we have to apply pressure to make sure that they're contractually following their contract documents. So it's hard for me to say each scenario could be completely different in how we'd approach it. So the best way to do that is to contact our team and try to get out there and resolve it early, and then we educate through the developer and contractors, and if PD is necessary, we'd get them involved, so, or code enforcement.
I think we'd,
fair.
yeah, I think we'd run into problems if there's like a trailer that needs to unload a skid steer and half the road would be, usually both sides are filled with vehicles in a construction zone. That's just my read. If you want, we can add it, or we can vote on it. I would like to make a,
I would also argue if you restrict parking on it, you're further pushing the parking problem down the street.
yeah. Just because I put it up to a vote doesn't mean I'm.
No, I just wanted to make the point be known, if the idea is to keep the street clean and not impede people, because you might have people moving in down the block, right?
It'll be, yeah.
And now all of a sudden, these guys can't park on this side of the street and this side of the street. Now they have to park further down and in front of this other guy's house. So there's gonna be implications either way, and problems. It's kind of hard to avoid.
Mayor and council, on item number 17 in the development contract does speak to street maintenance, and that has to be passable for traffic. And so it's part of the development agreement, some of those items, and they have to keep streets within the subdivision clean and pick up any debris. This is within the development agreement. And that would be one item that we could enforce with them beyond
Okay.
the ordinance.
That's, yeah. Well, I'll make a motion to add. No, I'm not gonna make a motion on that. You can make a motion on that.
Just a second. Okay, so I will move that no parking signs shall be posted as part of street installation before building permits are issued for those addresses.
Do I have a second? So motion dies due to lack of second. Any other anything else to add or things you want to talk about regarding 8A?
No, I would just add that staff made a very good point. That's included in the development contract.
Yeah.
That's where our mechanism should be.
So I'll make a motion approving final plat and PUD for Walcott Glen.
For both resolutions?
Yes.
I
Final
think-
plat and PUD.
With the amendment that we
With
already
the
voted.
amendment that was.
Jeremy brought up.
I'll second that.
Any comments? All those in favor vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Did you, anyone
I
abstain?
abstain.
You abstain?
Yeah.
Motion passes 3-0-1. Okay, item 8B, Cook Highlands PUD revision request.
Thank you. Mayor and council, we have a request, and I'll hand that over to Kendra for discussion.
Mr. Mayor, would you like me to summarize that? I know you have the packet, so I can certainly highlight it for you, or...
I don't need that. Does anybody else need a summary of 8B? Because I read it and you did such a good job preparing this. Actually, it looks like Natalie prepared it.
I'll make a motion to take no action.
I'll second. Yeah, the applicant, you can speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm Beth Husted with Trek Development. We are here before you this evening requesting you to consider that we be able to defer the cash park fees for this site until, and at which time each of the builders and the pad buyers come in for their building permit application. And I just wanted to get an opportunity to explain why we're asking this and talk a little bit about a further request that I have been making and been trying to anticipate some of the problems that we're going to encounter due to the delays that we've encountered. So in a letter that I wrote to staff, I asked that back on May 11th, prior to us doing our first amendment, I think it was in June, coming before you, that this council reconsider or consider restating the development contract to include those, some of those site improvement as SIPA for each of the pads, and we were granted that. But I also, in my request, requested that the council consider that we be able to continue to construct our utilities prior to the plat being filed, because your code says that you can't install utilities until the plat is filed. And we anticipated, due to the complicated nature of our project, the involvement of several different public entities, particularly for this intersection. We've got the city of Maple Grove, we've got Met Council, we've got the city of Corcoran, and we've got the developer. and we have easements, and we have encroachment agreements, and easements that need to be restated and made permanent that are temporary, and multiple encroachments, and because each party has so much interest in it, and they are stakeholders in this. And it has taken significantly longer to get these documents ready, and we cannot file a plat until these documents are done. Everybody involved, every public agency, the developer, we have all been doing really truly our best to collaborate, to cooperate, to work together to get this language done. There are attorneys involved, multiple attorneys involved, and we are just finding it is taking extensive amount of time to get everybody's input, to get everybody's needs met, and we are asking you if you would please consider allowing us to continue with our utilities. We have $1 million worth of pipe sitting on the site, and we cannot install it until the plat is filed. And we are all working very, very diligently to get that done. Everybody is working hard. I am not pointing fingers. There's, we've all had delays. We've all had changes. We have currently, just last week, we were informed there's a change in the intersection and who's going to construct it. And so it changes, and now it's going to be a public, and that has to be bid, and that can't be built until next year. So we're not the only ones here that are asking. As a developer, we're trying to be a responsible party, and we have a contractor that is out, that has purchased pipe. That contractor also bid the intersection. That bid now changes. So everybody is doing everything they can, but things have changed. Things have changed on the fly for us. And so we just really are here to, I thought about this before presenting to you tonight, and I thought about, okay, is anyone going to be harmed, the city particularly, the neighbors, if we are requesting that the cash park fees be deferred until building permit? Because this builder they were supposed to start this fall. We were supposed to get everything ready for them this fall. These delays have caused us not the ability to not be able to close, and so we have negotiated an extension, but our extension goes into March or April of 2023. And so they won't be starting. So asking for cash park fees now versus at the time they do their building permit, I'm wondering if there is, I haven't discussed this with staff or anybody, but is there any harm does anyone get harmed by that? And then the question is anybody being harmed, or is there a particular reason that I'm missing that we cannot continue with the construction of the site to get everything buttoned up for winter? Is anyone harmed, or does everyone benefit? And when I think about it, I think the neighbors benefit, I think the city benefits, the site gets buttoned up, we benefit, our contractor certainly benefits, Met Council benefits, and so that's really why we're here tonight, and I am sorry that I haven't been able to articulate this better sooner. But what's happened is it's been a moving target, and we have done everything that we can, everybody has, to do the best they can with the moving targets. And I commend staff, I commend my group, and that council's working hard. City of Maple Grove, has stepped up and done their part. So I'm just here to articulate the facts of what have evolved and how we came to this. And I think that we would really appreciate you considering allowing us to start utilities and to defer the cash park fees until the builders are able to build their buildings. So thank you. And if you have any questions, I'm here.
Thank you, Beth.
Thanks.
If I could, real quick, the concerns that the neighbors have next door,
Yeah.
you understand all of those?
I wrote them
and are
down.
able to help Kevin address them with those neighbors and
I'm
stuff?
here, that's exactly what I'm here to do, and I've walked the site.
That's
I've
okay.
looked at that particular area, and I've been paying close attention to
No,
it. So, yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
big thing for all of us.
It is for me too, yeah, because, yeah.
I've never experienced a group so involved
Mhm.
and understanding than that group there. They
Well, I think-
understood the
yeah.
parcel, they understood everything else. The other entity you're leaving out is Hennepin County, isn't it their intersection?
We have to build it.
Well, I understand,
I mean, the
but
city has to build it, it's on our property. Hennepin County will ultimately build the ultimate build, they will improve that intersection to its ultimate level, but right now, we have to build it.
you're laying the ground in is
Yeah, we're
what you're doing.
providing the
but-
land and we're putting
but-
the turn lanes in for it to be a safe
But
intersection now.
Hennepin County is also involved
They are
along
not
with Maple
paying for
Grove and
anything.
everything.
Yeah, but everyone else.
Oh, I
is-
understand.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you also own the property on the Maple Grove side?
I do not.
That, I thought you had mentioned that
I
was,
sold that to a developer, I entitled it and sold it for
Understood.
clients of mine. I do not own it.
just asking.
Yeah, I don't.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
One complicating factor here is staff is working through updates to park dedication fees,
Yes.
and they're probably gonna go up. I don't know if we know how much they're going to go up. I don't know if that means it's better to pay now or to pay later, though. So that might be another variable we want to consider.
If I may.
Yes.
I think there's one topic that's on the docket that we have material that we're voting on, and there's one topic that's first to our attention tonight.
Yeah, council, correct.
So my suggestion would be to make a formal request to city staff that it be put on future meeting. I can't make a decision tonight on something I have no information on, other than a plea from you. I don't know any backstory from the city on what it is.
Well, we could potentially get it from Kendra.
But we have no information on it, no research information. So my point would be with that would be, get it out there. I'm willing to entertain it for the next meeting that comes to us.
Kendra, do you have background?
Yeah, I think Kevin has more on the utility issue, is that, if that's your question. I think on the park dedication, I think Councilmember Nichols raises something. I think the staff report notes that for residential developments, and we've always said this is a residential development, park dedication is paid with the final plat. For commercial and industrial developments, it does get paid prior to issuance of building permits. So certainly, if the fees change between now and then, I think it would be certainly part of this request. You could certainly say, subject to the fees in place at the time, if you did choose to defer them.
Right.
In terms of the utility, maybe Kevin, you want to talk a little bit about our process on that? Is that the question?
No, I don't want to I don't want to mix the two issues. I think it would be somewhat of a nightmare to administer getting, handling at the time of each individual plat, for each individual site. I can't imagine that's the question. That's the request, is that each individual site.
But there would be 3 building permits, one for Applewood, one for the daycare, one for the memory care?
That's correct. We waived the fees on the villa units because we swapped the park dedication. So there really are only 3 building permits. So if you chose to do that, the risk to the city is, rather than collecting the fees now, you wait till they actually come in, which, we hope that's in March. The risk to the developer is if they defer them, they're subject to the fees in place then. And as you mentioned, we are in the process of updating our park dedication fees, and they're likely not going down. So
I think, this is, I think, that what we would set up, is we would set up a default change in city code by granting an exception to an established rule. So my inclination is that all you'd have to do is come up with something. Projects never go smoothly. And I don't want to have our laws subject to things that go wrong with, every site has something that is a challenge or is wrong. So my inclination is to just keep it how it is.
I empathize with that idea, but I think because it's PUD, it's a unique agreement, and it's our role to ensure we're negotiating for the benefit of the city. So if we can get a benefit to the city that outweighs what we're giving up, I think it's incumbent on us to do it. And what I see as the benefit in this case would be if we can impose the then current park fees.
But this isn't a PUD negotiation.
It is a PUD negotiation, I think. That's
Oh,
what
they're
I-
asking to change the PUD.
It is the PUD.
Oh, okay.
Amendment in this case.
So it's a one-off that helps us build our park infrastructure. And it's hard for me to say no to that in light of what I'm seeing on the city park remaster project and how that's evolving.
I guess we don't know that we don't know the new policy is gonna be beneficial to the city. I hear what you're saying, though. We're not 100% sure.
My thought on that is the potential upside is unknown. We don't know if the fee is going to change at all. And
Maybe just.
we have a higher risk of actually not seeing a building permit versus seeing a plat. So I don't think we have any precedents where we've ever changed this. And I really don't want to set a precedence where we have every next builder that comes in wants to plat land, wants to do it based on building permits.
Councilor Schultz, may I speak? Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I thought about this because I understand that is a concern. But I asked, when I met, I had a conversation with Jessica, and I asked if this was an unusual situation, if you had a project, a mixed residential project that had these types of uses, and if you've ever been faced with this in the city, where you have many cities consider their multifamily commercial. I don't know why, but they do the same thing. They allow building permit, cash park fees to be paid at building permit. And I'm not sure why. I know single family in all cities or most cities do it this way for single family. And I think it might be because each home is getting built and people live in them. And in a condo building or an apartment building or a multifamily building, it has to be built, and there are no occupancy permits that are provided until the entire building is done. So I've just been thinking about that too, because I think I understand that concern. But I do believe this is a unique situation in the city of Corcoran, and that you have not yet been faced with a mixed residential project with these kind of uses. So I'm just asking you to please, I don't feel like, I just feel like this is something that would help us get the pipe in the ground, get this site finished. And I understand that that you don't want to set precedent, but this is a project that has many different public entities as stakeholders. And that has been the challenge. It's not bad, it's just super challenging to get everybody. And I maybe I don't know your projects as well as you do, but I don't believe there's been this kind of any of us have been faced with this. I have had Met Council tell me it's the most difficult, most complicated. I've had cities tell me the same thing. We feel it is, and I've been in business for 36 years, and I've never dealt with anything like this. So I just am asking you to consider the unique nature and the complicated cooperative effort that we've been really working, and that would be in the benefit of the city. The city's getting its water station. It needed the encroachment agreement. It's getting its easements. And we've got an L80 lift station that serves the rest of this community that we're working with too. So this was a complicated project, and we're doing our best, and and I'm just asking you to help us get this buttoned up so we don't have a messy site this winter. Thank you.
I'm wondering if maybe we should consider tabling this until Mayor McKee is with us, so we don't end up with a 2-2, and we can make a full decision.
We have a motion and a second, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah, we have a motion and a second.
To do what, if you can just remind me?
The motion and the second was
To
to
take
take no
no
action on the resolution to the request for the change.
So all those in favor, vote by saying aye.
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 All opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 3-1. Option, or on to 8C, O'Brien Concept Plan.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Kendra has a short presentation.
It's really, just if you can pull up the slide that shows the site plan, it just might be helpful. So the staff report outlines a lot of different issues. This is the applicants intending to come forward with a concept plan. And so, again, the idea is to get as much feedback from the council about this project so they can make a decision about whether or not to proceed with the project, which is a new corporate office for Crystal Distribution. It's about 17,000 square feet. The site plan and narrative vary a little bit, but it's office and some showroom and a shop space, some room for expansion. So thoughts about the building, it would require a variance because it's in the MUSA, which our code says cannot be developed without sewer and water, and as the council knows, there's no sewer and water here yet. It's in a study area that will be a joint study with the Met Council in advance of our next comprehensive plan update. So that's a big policy issue, and you should weigh in on whether you support the idea of allowing them to develop on sewer and water. Certainly, we've highlighted a few other issues about the site plan itself, but I think the screen shows what's the real issue, the most significant issue, I should say, for the council, which is this property is part of the Southeast District, which plans a frontage road, a Highway 55 frontage road to connect Rolling Hills Road and Pioneer Trail. It's going to be built with the Pioneer Trail subdivision from Pioneer Trail up to the Medina Electric project. If this project were to proceed, they'd build the section between Rolling Hills Road and the Medina Electric project, so we'd have one parcel gap between connecting that road. And so engineering is in the midst of a feasibility study. The image on the right was not in your packet, but is an image that's part of the ongoing feasibility study. What was in your packet was their recommendation, which is that the road ideally should be located where the applicant's concept plan shows it on the north lot line because of view corridors along Rolling Hills. I summarized in the staff report some of the challenges of that for the grading that needs to happen along that common lot line. The benefit of that is it provides separation between the industrial use on the property and the residential. The alternative location moves that road, as you can see here. This is showing the alternative road location. And that really splits this property, pushes the industrial property up against those those residential homes. Also makes smaller sites that'll be harder to get more meaningful, I think, potentially industrial sites, although still it's a 9-acre site, probably large enough ultimately for development on both sides of that road. So certainly the applicant is looking for feedback on all of the project, but the road piece is important because that will require a city design project to be part of this preliminary plat and site plan. And so knowing that location is really important, and certainly Kevin can jump in if I missed anything. But again, not going to go through the whole report, but just wanted to highlight that for council and anybody listening.
One question I have, Kendra, I think you said there will be a gap in the frontage road where it wouldn't actually punch through to 19. Is that correct? At least with this part of the development in that area?
Yeah, the piece of property to the east of this is the Medina Electric property. And when Pioneer Trail, that'll come in from the Pioneer Trail Industrial Park will come in from the west, and this would come in from the east. And yes, there would be that section south of the Garages 2 property that's owned by Medina Electric, and that wouldn't be built until Medina Electric was ready to proceed, unless the council had a different philosophy on eminent domain.
Okay. So we don't have to worry about traffic from the industrial park routing through onto Rolling Hills, at least as part of what's happening here.
Correct. Ultimately, that is the plan, though, is to provide that connection between Pioneer Trail and Rolling Hills, but it wouldn't happen with this project.
Okay. I would just be concerned about the Rolling Hills and 55 intersection. If it's going to start carrying semis or whatever is going to go back and forth between the industrial park. I think there would be some safety concerns with that. But if that connection won't be made at this time, that seems to be an issue for another day. In my discussion with the homeowner who lives on that eastern side, whose home is kind of right up against the property line, I feel the better plan would be to move that road about 200 feet south, just to create some separation there between the residential and potentially what will be a high-traffic frontage road at some point. I also think it might actually lend itself maybe to better development, given if this project went forward, most of the site isn't being used. If you had something on the opposite side of the street that could be carved off in the future, that might be better. I also think you'll get some protection from the code updates that staff is working on to create buffers between adjacent zones. So that homeowner in particular, because they're so close, would then have whatever that extra buffer space is between them and whatever the industrial use would be, versus being right up against a public right-of-way. So that's my feedback.
Say that again, that last sentence?
So with this draft,
Yeah.
their property line is right up against the right-of-way and the frontage road. If there were separate industrial parcels there on the opposite side of the road, had the road shifted farther south by 200 feet, the buffer standards that the staff is working on as part of our 2022 objectives would create, I forget what number we were targeting, 60 feet or so of landscaped buffer between industrial and residential. So they would end up with a pretty tolerable situation. And the landowner felt that way as well when I corresponded with him.
It's too bad that that public road can't start on like the southeast part of the property and go travel diagonally.
Yeah.
Well, the property owner you're referring to, he sent a note out with an attachment. He actually had a suggestion of it coming in and then turning north and then heading west. I guess my question would be to staff, did you see that exhibit?
I asked Natalie about it, and she said it would probably be much more expensive because of wetland impacts and need to do more fill.
I'm wondering if it, from an engineering standpoint, from a safety standpoint, is it even feasible having that many 90-degree turns in it?
That was another concern.
You know?
I thought it was a great idea. I'm glad that he was thinking creatively about it. He ended up being pretty happy with the road shifting farther south, though, too.
In this plan? The plan on the...
The one on the
site
right?
plan on the right, yeah.
Yeah.
Could you commented to shift the one up on the north 200 feet to the south? That would be impeding that wetland.
It's a storm pond. I think there's wetland impacts either way from what the...
Is there on both ends? I'm sitting here trying to think of how it
Kevin's
looks
raising
and
his
how it
finger.
sits.
If I may, I just add some clarification to the second drawing, not the schematic, the one on the right. That's not been proposed by the applicant. That was from an old concept plan in 2004, when United Properties looked at this property.
Okay.
It was very early on. I don't know how accurate it would be, because if you look at the schematic where they show existing wetland, that big lobe of existing wetland, basically the eastern quarter, that's all been delineated wetland, so confirmed wetland. So they're going to have to minimize, they're going to be able to cross somewhere because of safety reasons. They can cross out to mitigate it.
Yep.
But they're not going to be able to build the storm pond there. So I just don't want you to rely too much on that being a solid design. It's just intended to show that the true spots are either where they're proposing with the concept on the very northeast corner of the parcel, or somewhere generally where they're showing in that schematic. And that's just strictly based on site distance connection to Rolling Hills, because Rolling Hills goes up and down pretty significantly there, and you can't have southbound traffic coming over a hill with a semi pulling out. So that's why there's really only two options to connect on the road. One other thing that's way down the road that I'm just going to put out there, and it's going to be difficult because it's determined later, is if there's no wetland on the north and there's wetland on the south, the environmental folks will have a healthy debate on should that road, because you have to prove that there's no other option. There may be a healthy debate way far down the line, so I would encourage, if this goes forward, to dig into that early about, can the road even be split in the middle because there's a potential another supportable, viable path. And so to fill wetlands, especially if it's a premium wetland or even a mid-level wetland, you'll have difficulty getting that impact approved with a potential option to the north. And so there is a ton of wrinkles again in this area, but I just want to point that out as you're thinking about that. Both of those connections are viable from an access standpoint, but other permits, rules might influence it to be in one case or the another. That's kind of I wanted to plant that seed in your mind, so we don't get too far down the road.
Is the applicant here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so.
You want me to step up?
No, I was just kind of like, we were sitting here talking about that phantom road on the right, and it's not even your idea.
No, it's not, no. We'd as soon not have any road.
You got a helicopter in it?
No, we'd have our own road on the south side, but that's on the south side of the property, but we just as soon not have to connect to anything, have our own. But we were told that this is gonna happen. We're in the process of purchasing the property, so we need to know where the road's going. We would prefer no road, number one. Number two, if it's gonna be a road, we'd like to see it on the north side. If it comes 200 feet down, it pretty much makes that piece of property worthless. The only buildable site is up where the building is right now, because
There's
there's
so much elevation change there.
Elevation, yep.
I'm looking at the topo on I'm not like texting my wife or my girlfriend. I'm paying attention to what's going
Neither?
on.
You can see it on the figure to the right. It's
Yeah, you can see
significant
it on the right.
grades.
That's pretty close.
Yeah.
Significant grades and.
So we've spent a lot of money on the site already. We've had the wetland delineation done. That report is out there. Pretty much everything on that eastern side is some form of wetland. So it's got to cross somewhere. It's just where.
So then your access thought to get to this parcel that
Originally,
you,
there's a road right now on the south side of the property. It's an old maintenance road. I think this used to be a tree farm one day, back in the day. And right on that south property line, there's access right there, and it goes up the hill. That was our original intent, was to use that road. That was gonna be our access.
that comes out onto Rolling Hills?
Correct.
On the lower southeast corner of your.
Correct, yes. Yep.
Yeah, there's something there, but,
Yeah.
wow.
It's right across the street from the access to
The rental.
the rental place. Correct. Yep.
No, I hadn't.
Yeah. So that was our original intent. And then this all came about, we talked with the city. So,
Why is it that we have to have that they can't have their own driveway? I know we already said that, but that was a long time ago.
So the city's master plan is to have that frontage road. We do not want 500,000 square feet of industrial with one access onto Pioneer Trail. And this whole area is planned as industrial, so the idea is to provide multiple accesses into what could ultimately be millions of square feet of industrial down in this area. And MnDOT will be trying to close every access that exists. And so this is the connection for that planned industrial park.
And then again, speaking to site distance, it is not good site distance to access in the southeast corner.
It's
So we
too
wouldn't
close to-
permit that
okay.
as a safety issue, even if it were, throw out our comp plan and say, we'll just allow a driveway, which we would still require the driveway to maybe even be on the north end. Because we wouldn't want their business and traffic coming out in an unsafe access to Rolling Hills, which is our local road, collector road in the future. So again, there's only 2 points where we would ever, what we know today, and we're still in a feasibility site, there's only 2 points that we believe are permittable, and they're either in the northeast corner or somewhere kind of at the midline.
Oh,
And again, the midline one is questionable due to wetlands, which we won't know until you go through the process. And again, it'll be a healthy debate. So just keep that in mind too. We're limited to just those 2 spots for safety reasons.
Mr. Mayor,
yeah.
is there a map that includes that whole site to the west so we can see a full picture
Give me just a moment.
of
I
this?
can pull that up.
I don't want to take away from
no, you're fine.
what we're looking at, I just,
That's what I'm looking at too.
There is one out there, I've seen it.
yep, I know there is, I just don't know if they can find it quick enough for us.
Well, we put the concept plan from the Southeast District on page 1 to just show the connection.
Right.
The 2004 Bonestro plan that's marked up, that was on my screen, we didn't bring that whole plan. That was preliminary design, again, that was done in 2004 as part of the United Properties project of what is now Corcoran Farms. But that Southeast District plan, which is in Appendix A of the zoning ordinance, I think is what Jess is pulling up. And that shows that connection. And it's a frontage road that really runs all the way ultimately from Rolling Hills to Pioneer and then from Pioneer out to 19. And again, just good traffic planning, keep traffic off of Highway 55 and provide access for those ultimate industrial users.
I know what, you can't see what
I
I'm screen, sorry.
I remember all of that, and
This one connection, though, is not, with the current concept plan that is, or
With Pioneer Trails, we are not proposing that connection to the north that she's pointing to. So you saw that preliminary concept plan. The preliminary plat is in and is going to be coming to you this fall. We are not recommending that connection into the residential area, but rather just keeping that frontage road as a frontage road containing the industrial there. So there's no intersection between the industrial traffic and the residential traffic in this area, is what we're going to be proposing.
that's what I thought we talked about way back.
There was somewhere in a narrative that I read, and I don't know if it was in the staff report or if it was in a email that we received from the neighbor talking about a large grade differentiation between this property and their property and having to cut, it almost made it sound like having to cut into their property.
So the engineer's memo did point that out, and I did kind of highlight it in my staff report as well, is that the grading, the grades kind of goes like this. And so there's a component where we will either need to build a fairly large retaining wall or get permission to grade onto that property. And so if they were not interested, and I think that was
You're talking the
page
property
2
to
of
the west of
engineer's,
this?
Well, all the properties adjacent to it, because you basically have a hill, right?
Yep.
You're visualizing semi, so we can't really stick with, it's too steep and then too inclined, so basically you gotta fill the belly, and so in some spots you're cutting, some spots you're filling, so there'll likely be some combination of grading onto a property if they're willing to and it makes sense, or a retaining wall on the, like on the edge of the right of way where they're not. So in the very northeast corner, that house that we were talking about at the beginning, that's probably the most immediate one, just north of the
Yeah.
property. They would be sitting lower because they're in a hole. So they would actually, their backyard would see up likely into a retaining wall because we don't have enough room to grade there. So just from that view, it would be up into a retaining wall or up into an industrial backyard if the road were moved and split the property.
Is that house, what, legal non-conforming because it's so close to the property line?
Council member, I haven't checked the setbacks. I mean, it's certainly very close. It is an odd location on that lot when you look at it. I'm not sure, though, if it meets the setbacks today or not. I'd have to double check.
Okay, and then my next question for staff would be, when we had garages too, there was a lot of concern of stormwater that flowed off that property down to the neighborhood to the north and then out to Rolling Hills Road. Does this water currently flow north along Rolling Hills Road or no?
That's you have good memory. They're really independent of each other.
This flows south.
Yeah,
So
they're not in the same kind of drain, they're not in the same path.
Okay, so a road would not increase any water flow or directionally change the water flow that's there?
From a stormwater perspective, they're really independent issues.
Okay.
Like they're independent sites of the other issue that we're evaluating.
What's the distance required between the house and the lot line?
I can look that up. I don't know off
Because
the top of my head.
I see it as 36, the house is 36 feet from the lot, if you're asking.
Yeah, I know it's close, and that was the concern that he raised.
It's 36 feet, approximately.
The driveway for the garages is still intact on this until that frontage road were to be put in, correct?
They have the rights to access all the way down to 55, so basically they would be paralleling the west property line of this
Right.
concept. They could maintain that, or they could modify
Hook into the frontage road when it
into it, or when it
comes
gets
in.
built in the future, they can connect in the future. So they're kind of still independent of this, but they might have some options if it moves forward.
Well, this road would cut south of that development, wouldn't it?
It would cut south of the development, yep, kind of eventually through their access. And it was always planned that they would access off of this through road in the future.
Mr. Mayor, the rear yard setback for the residences to the north for the principal structure is a 30-foot setback
Okay.
from that rear lot line.
So it would be legal conforming.
It would be conforming if it is in fact 36 feet that you were scaling.
It looks to be about that when I do the map as well.
Very.
You don't bring easy ones to us, do you?
That's why we bring them to you, to make the hard decisions.
So if the road were 200 feet south, is there room for this project to fit between the road and the northern boundary? If you rotated it, is there space there?
I think it really cuts down on the future expansion. You know, this is our preliminary.
Mhm.
You know, this is just within the last month about talks about increasing the size for this piece of property. I mean, it's a nice piece of property. But if you move that 200 feet down and you go almost right to the middle, it just makes it, for any size, gone.
It's harder.
It's just too hard. And so, in our mind, it has to be in the north, or otherwise it's not going to move forward. We're going to walk away from it. And I will say this, the owners, Pat and Bobby Joe O'Brien, they're very excited about this site. They're looking at putting their national corporate headquarters there. And they've got offices in Seattle, North Carolina, Dallas, and Elk River. And then they're gonna make this their be national headquarters.
How big are those other locations? Because on satellite, they look like there's some good size to those.
Yeah, they're their manufacturing sites. They manufacture curbs for rooftop equipment. So, but this is gonna house, their corporate office stuff.
Okay, so this is not a manufacturing,
No, this is not a manufacturing facility. It's gonna be a office, shop, and a showroom area with the potential of expansion.
would,
So,
if the wetland issue to the south was actually doable, would there be any way to, instead of having parking on the west side of the building, actually putting parking on the east side and run the road around the west side of the building and up?
it's a possibility. We actually had one concept drawing where the parking lot went all the way around the building. That was one concept. So it's increases the cost, because there is such a lot of grade changes out there, very steep. And this is the flattest, the very top part is the flattest part. Granted, there's gonna be some excavating and balancing of the site, but
Yeah, I was just thinking if, that would still leave you could actually shift the whole building north and still have expansion potential up where the actual road is on this concept.
I thought Kevin said that they couldn't move the road down there.
Well, I got the impression that it was questionable until we have more of a wetland.
They would need to apply for that, go through the TEP process, and people way more smart than me related to wetlands would make that determination. But you couldn't, we wouldn't allow it, so the physical connection to Rolling Hills is gonna either be in those two spots, right? So then the question becomes, if it's the southern one that more bisects the lot, then the question becomes, if that's the route, would that be permittable? Because part of impacting a wetland says that there are no other viable options. It's one of the questions that you have to check, right? To get through, to be able to impact that wetland.
Alan not liking it isn't enough to say.
Well, and the challenge with that is it's to be determined down the line, and they'll request a bunch of info. So to really get that decision, it's gonna be a level of effort and significant conversation. It's gonna be a healthy debate. It's probably not gonna be a 4-0 TEP vote on it, quite frankly. Maybe I'm wrong, there's not enough data to know that, but the message for you is we only have two spots we can connect the actual access to Rolling Hills that we believe at today's information, we believe quite confidently that there's only gonna be two. And one may not be permittable through wetlands. That's the only message that I wanna commit to today. So to your answer is it may be allowed and it may not be, and it might be quite a while before we know that, unfortunately.
So the question, sorry, were you gonna say something?
No, I was just gonna ask a different question. He kind of answered that.
In the, part of always the challenge is when there are residences next to something industrial. Ideally, we would not have that road so they wouldn't be exposed to the traffic and the semi-trucks, and I don't even know if you said that semi-trucks would be on it, but then secondly, let's just suppose that we have to put the road up there. I mean, ultimately, it is coded industrial, and we have to have industrial stuff, including a road in an industrial area. So then, part of me appreciates that the building is on the west side of the campus there. And do they have a lot of 18-wheelers associated with their company and
I think it's more the industrial park, because
Yeah,
when
that's what
that
I'm-
window distributor goes in, that'll be a lot of traffic probably.
Yeah, but not to say that they can't change that. While they're constructing it, they'll have 18-wheelers, but will they have because it's an office and a showroom and a shop, and 6,000 square feet is not that big of a shop.
it won't be big. It's not gonna be semi-trucks going in there. It's not gonna be that kind of stuff. Where you're gonna see it is when that road connects to everything else.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, this,
and then,
Yeah.
are they really
yeah.
gonna be coming down that way? Because is there gonna be a light, a traffic light on that intersection where they can cross?
That's
Probably
a
not.
question I brought up
That would
way
be
back
more
when this
steady,
all
right?
started. 55, the state isn't gonna do anything with that.
That'll be a right, you're gonna turn right, and you're gonna come out of there and head west. You can get across, or go east.
So this is the,
Similar to like, what is it, by Polaris, where they have a right in, right out only?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Well, at some point, if it's coded industrial, either, I mean, you can make the argument we shouldn't do anything in that parcel ever, because we're gonna run into the problem of traffic down there, which is a consistent problem in everything that we ever do. I don't know how you avoid that, other than saying, we're just not gonna allow anyone to do anything. But I was saying I like the buffer on the east side to sort of, it looks way bigger than what we've even expected out of other projects. This is, in my opinion, this is kind of how I like to see concept plans, is although you've put a bunch of work and energy into it, it's light on details, so you can get a read as to what we think about things, but you haven't put hundreds of thousands of dollars into it. And so, not into this particular presentation, the rest of it I'm sure you have, but just as feedback, I like the concept. The devil's always in the details. And so for me, since we're not voting on anything, I think it's the best we can do in a challenging spot. Thank you for bringing it to us.
I think it's a great idea, the view that you're gonna have out of those offices to Rolling Hills Road, down into that wetland and stuff are gonna be wonderful. To put the parking on the west side, I like that also. I'm a little concerned of everybody leaving and pointing headlights to the neighborhood to the north is my biggest concern, even though there's a ton of trees up there. If the road were to go that way, it's a neat place, it's elevated, and it'd be nice if we could make something work.
Yeah, it's.
The parcel to the south, is that part of this too?
No, that's owned by the same gentleman, but that's part of Medina.
I understand that, but
Yeah.
that's not part of what you're working on or doing.
We made an offer to purchase that, and it just didn't come to the table. The grade changes on that are even worse than.
It's a big hole right there.
Yeah,
Thus the guardrail all the way.
Yeah, doesn't do us any good to have that piece. It doesn't make maybe push the property, more to the south, but it doesn't, we're not gonna spend the money on that. And I will say this, the owners do like that piece of property just for the privacy. They want to plant even more trees out there. They don't want to be in a development where there's all open.
Lines of open
That's
space
just-
and stuff.
That doesn't fit their lifestyle. They wanna have trees around them, nature, all those things. So as far as headlights, and there's gonna be a lot of more trees planted there if we move ahead with the project, so.
No, I was just talking the neighborhood to the north.
Yeah, to the north.
And on the north side of that
Well, I'm reading
east-west road and
You're reading
stuff.
the notes that you guys put together too. I mean, there's gonna be a substantial amount of trees being planted just on that road. In the notes that you put in there. I think there was one every 50 feet.
On the north side of the road?
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things that we were talking about is I think that there are some landscape requirements, but there's also something that we can think about. Certainly, we understand the road's always been planned to be on that dividing line between the residential and the industrial. And that's common, as a way to provide a transition between those different land uses. And so I think part of what we were talking about was if we do keep the street up there, the way the plans show, we should be looking at some landscaping in there, because there's right-of-way in there that we can do some landscaping. I think that's probably what we were talking about, landscaping in that section. The trees, lineal feet of site perimeter, that's just how we get to our tree count, so it's not necessarily along the perimeter, you can put them anywhere. But I think certainly if it does, if the recommendation is to proceed per the comprehensive plan and the master plan with the road on the north, which is what engineering's recommendation for the first preference is, we'd go ahead and proceed with that, continue the feasibility study, which we think might be another 4 to 6 weeks out. The applicant has submitted the fees for that, and it is underway. But what we want to get the feedback about is the council's preferred touchdown on Rolling Hills. Really, again, from a sightline perspective, it's either where the comprehensive plan shows it on the north, or possibly, as Kevin said, another location about 200 feet to the south. And it's important that they hear that tonight, not wait for the feasibility study where the council's at, because they need to make decisions on closing on the property. And if, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it may change their decision if we say, we really want to pursue a first alternative 200 feet south.
Can I ask a question about the road being on the north? If the comment is there may be encroachment onto the properties to the north, is there an actual road easement on the north currently, those properties that you would encroach into, or would you have to buy easement or eminent domain easement to actually make the road work?
I believe they're platted, so there'd just be drainage and utility easement, so no road easement. So we'd basically start the right-of-way, I think it'd be 80-foot right-of-way for this type of road. We'd start that at the platted line and take that south, so we would.
So really, there would be no encroachment on the properties to the north?
No, I think that comment was intended to be like, when you have elevation differences, your choices are to either acquire the rights to grade onto the property.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can be beneficial depending on where the site is.
Yeah.
Or you'd have to figure out within your right-of-way how you're gonna accomplish that, i.e. a retaining wall. And in this case, it's likely, in my judgment, that there would be a significant retaining wall, you know, on the north side of that road, northeast side of that road, due to it being so low and the need for us to have a safe approach eastbound into Rolling Hills.
So the property to the north is lower than the road?
Yes, ultimately, yeah.
So any retaining wall would be built on the property to the south?
On the future platted city right-of-way.
Okay.
And that could be removed later if I mean, it's residential, so it's a totally different thing, but if they wanted to change their plans later, they could always approach the city to fill that area and remove the wall, but
yeah,
that's a complete wild card later.
Okay.
How much landscaping do you think would fit between the road and the existing homes? Just 10 feet, 50 feet?
Well, I mean, I think certainly lots of detailed design before we know the answer to that. But just say in an 80-foot right-of-way, we have a 32-foot wide street.
With some turn lanes right at the approach.
Yeah, right, that's true.
So I mean, it would be, typically we try to center the road in the right-of-way. That's your best future options, your best planning. In this case, with the specific constraints, we would probably try to really push that physical road in the right-of-way as far south as possible. We have to plan for a future utility corridor, likely paralleling this road. So I mean, there are times where we think it makes a ton of sense to kind of off-center that road. But we don't know that at this point, but that is something we can pursue within that 80-foot right-of-way of, hey, let's really try to push the physical road. Even though we have the right-of-way up there, we could try to at least build the first phase of the road south, and maybe what that whole area looks different when we reconstruct it, and we can shift it 20 feet back north in 30 years when we reconstruct the road. So those options are yet to be determined, and we could try to influence the road there. We have certain things we need to stay in the right-of-way, or that just makes sense, but there probably is some way to shift that road even 10, 15 feet that might unlock some more land, even in the first 20 years where it could be a better screening area.
Okay.
Can I ask the applicant a couple questions?
Sure.
So, if this is corporate office and showroom, what is the shop intended for?
Corporate trailers, personal trailers, there's gonna be their family business in there also.
Yeah, 'cause that's one of the things I read in the narrative. That was my second follow-up question. Do you have any idea what the other businesses may be included?
They have real estate properties that they manage.
Okay.
And then any other, they have 5 children, they plan on starting other businesses, that's gonna be their, they have other personal business plans.
So potentially the intent could change quite a bit over time.
Over time, yes, but their primary focus would be CDI.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So we're just looking for comment, right?